Hi, so in this video we will be discussing about a particular topic that has been kind of confusing for many students for a while, and I hope to mm, clear any confusions that you have, right? Okay, so what I'm going to talk about, okay, let's start with this question. What do you think square root of 4 is? Is it going to be positive 2 or negative 2? So this is kind of this confusion that have been like puzzling many people. So there's a very simple answer for this. Let me give you the answer first. Is that square root of 4 is equal to 2. Nothing else. There's no negative about anything, nothing negative about this. It's positive, right? Okay, it's not just square root of 4. Let's say square root of 9 is equal to positive 3. Let's say square root of 2 is equal to 1.4142, and it goes on and on, right? So when you say something about the square root, it's not going to be anything negative. It's the square root is always going to give you a positive number, right? And on the other hand, you cannot have any ambiguity in a square root. Let's say you have square root 4. This is just a number, right? Square root 4 itself is a number. And a number cannot have two different values, positive or negative, or even like switch between like, okay, today I need to be a positive number, or tomorrow I need to be a negative number, or something like that. There's nothing confusing about this except that we tend to like confuse this because of this reason. Let me give you the reason, right? Okay, so when people first started to talk about square roots in the first place, the question that first, I mean, they started to talk about this question when people were tempted to ask question like this: what number, when multiplied by itself, gives you 4? So this is the question that they would ask. So in other words, it's an equation: x times x equals 4. X is the number that you're supposed to find. Okay, so this is just multiplication, not another x. It's just x multiplied by x. Okay, let me write this in a different way. X squared equals 4. So this is an equation, right? So simply you are going to solve a quadratic equation, not just an equation. It's a quadratic equation. So when people ask this question, what would you give as an answer? So there's two answers, right? X equals 2 and negative 2. Let me write it in a better form. So positive square root of 4 or negative square root of 4. So you need to specify like square root of 4 itself is positive 2, and when you put a negative sign in front, you get negative 2. That is your answer. So when people started to discuss about this type of equations, they came up with two answers. They always came up with two answers, one positive and one negative, which itself is where the confusion starts, right? Let me just divide this page. So people get confused with the two questions. So x squared equals 4. This is one question versus square root. Sorry, just write it as square root of 4. So these are the two questions. So this is asking what number multiplied by itself gives you 4. And this is just asking what is the square root of 4, right? So when you solve equations, you get two answers. What one is the positive square root and the negative square root. Square root itself is positive. So that's why you need to specify two different answers. One is the positive square root, which is just square root of 4. The other one is negative square root of 4. That's what it is. So you get positives and negatives when you just solve this equation, not just when you just say what square root of 4 is. This will give you only 2. So let me write that here. This will only give you 2 here, versus this will give you two answers. Uh, 2 and negative 2. So I think this should be the source of confusion. So you get two answers only when you are given an equation. When you just ask what square root of 4, it's just square root. It's 2. Okay, so let me give you something else that would make little bit, maybe a little bit confusing. What would you say about negative 2 square? And then you take the square root. Square root of negative 2 square. So the the answer would, many of you would say, okay, square root cancels with let me just power 2. So that's what you, and so you say this will be equal to negative, but this is actually um, not correct. This is wrong. So, okay, so let's see how we could go about this. Negative 2 squared is 4, right? When you multiply negative 2 by 2, it's 4. Take the square root on both sides, you get 2. It's not that simply that the square root cancels 2. Let me write this out in a better way. When you have x squared and take the square root of that, we are tempted to say that this is x. This is what we know. The square root cancels power 2. But it's not actually that what happens there. When you have x, you take the square root of x squared, you get the absolute value of x. Get the absolute value of x. For those who don't know what the absolute value of x is, let me give you. So when you absolute value, it makes you forget the sign of the number. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have the absolute value of 3. That's positive 3. And you just, I mean, meaning you forget the sign is that you simply give out the positive value of that number. Okay, what about the absolute value of negative 3? Okay, it's negative, but you still give out 3. Always it makes things positive. Let's say you have negative 1.5 and take the absolute value. You take 1.5. You get just 1.5. You just forget the negative sign and you instead concentrate on the positive number of them. You just flip the sign if it's negative. If it's positive, you keep it as it is. So now you see what magic is occurring here when you take the square root of a squared number, right? It gives out the absolute value of it. So see how you can relate this to this thing that I just told here, right? Okay. Okay, so let's see how this helps to solve our equation x squared equals 4 in a sense. Okay, let's take the square root on both sides, which gives you absolute x, and this just gives you 2, as I said earlier, right? So you need to find x so that the absolute value of x is 2. So If x equals 2, you still get the absolute value of 2. And if x is negative 2, you still get negative 2. So this is how you get the answer to this actually. So I hope this video helped you clear any doubts that you have about the square root, positive or negative, right? And if you have any further questions, please make sure that you comment your questions down below in the comment section. Okay, bye. Hope to see you in another video.